Welcome to Power Your Story, Season 6.
A podcast from Wake Ranch Training Center High School in Chicago.
In this episode, we talk with DeShawn Fontleroy from the Sports Mastery Podcast about training, how to stay focused on your goals, getting proper sleep, and sports. This episode was recorded in 2019. Links to the Sports Mastery Podcast and DeShawn's website will be in the show notes for this episode at poweryourstorypodcast.com and in the episode description in your listening app.
You got the show.
Okay, my name is Edward Palmer. I'm going to ask you this first question. When did your career as a broadcaster start?
Well, first of all, thank y'all for having me on. Appreciate y'all reaching out to me. I train out of a physical therapy clinic where we have a 10,000 square foot clinic, and the other half of it is a sports performance gym. And I met a gentleman over there about 6 years ago that played in the NFL for 2 years, and he got his rehab done there. And he never went back to the NFL. We trained a little bit. He got another tryout, but he was never picked up. And he became a fireman, and he would train athletes too. We were sharing the same space. And he started a 6-week mental toughness program while he was a fireman. And somewhere in between him becoming a fireman and getting done with the NFL, he started a podcast. And that resulted in him becoming a motivational speaker, doing a lot of great things in the community. And he interviewed me. And from that interview, I got some business from the interview. And for me, I'm always looking to distinguish myself from other sports performance coaches. I met with him, consulted with him for about 3 hours at his home. And I just invested in, at the time, an $1,100 podcasting course, how to podcast from A to Z. And I always wanted to do something, that was sports related in terms of sports psychology, mental toughness, social dynamics, how to carry yourself on and off the field, how to approach the game, no matter what sport you're playing, from an intellectual standpoint.
Did you want to be a podcast when you was a kid, and why?
I'll be 45 in May. So when I was younger, there was no podcasting around. But growing up early on in the mid to late 80s, I was always fascinated by the hip hoppers at the time. And I never wanted to be a rapper, but I always thought it was cool to be on a mic. I always thought it was cool to be a sportscaster. I always knew I had a voice. I knew that I would get into coaching. And when that opportunity came, I just took advantage of it. But being on radio, I think growing up, we all have a fascination of being on the radio or being on the news or being on television. I never saw this coming. It was kind of just blessed upon me. And then I just took action. So that'll be one of if you're taking notes right now, no matter what you want to do in life, you have to take action. Even if you fail, you'll have a valuable experience.
Why do you love being a podcaster?
Well, for y'all and for anybody that's doing it who really understands it, whether you have a podcast, whether you have a blog, whether you have a vlog, whether you have a newsletter or any of those things like that, the one thing it does when you're speaking such a certain subject matter, it puts you in a position of authority and a credibility. That's all these things do in terms of podcasting, having a newsletter, having a video vlog. When you follow people that you trust, you look to them as an authority and they have credibility. So that is one of my biggest takeaways from, podcasting.
Who inspired you?
I went about it from a different approach because when I got into podcasting at the time, I wasn't listening to podcasts. I didn't start listening to podcasts until I started podcasting. I just knew that I had a voice. But when I think about early influences, I've always been, impressed and influenced by Eric Thomas's work, but he never influenced me into podcasting. I just thought that he was a great motivator. I like Les Brown, Gary Vaynerchuk, but I don't listen to a lot of other podcasters. It's like being a rapper. I know some rappers, they just don't listen to other rappers. They might have respect for other guys. They might listen to a few tracks every now and then. But for me, I like to be authentic. And there's people that I learn from, but I don't like When I learn from somebody, I like to break down their work, master their style, but, and bring it back to what I'm doing where it's authentic and personally mine. So for that reason, I don't listen to a lot of other podcasters like every day, if that makes sense.
Okay. Do you have a favorite on SportsCenter?
Honestly, I don't watch a lot of TV. So if I'm watching SportsCenter, if I do come across it, it's just to get the highlights, but I'm busy every day. I just don't have time for it. I would rather be working with kids than watching the game itself, or watching the highlights. Just every now and then I will catch it. But it's like anything you do, once you learn the magic, the people on the other side now, it's not impressive to you. And it's not to be arrogant or anything. It's just like when you have the confidence doing what you do and when you put your heart and soul into something and you learn how it works behind the scenes, none of it is really impressive. They're just sitting up there with a suit on. I know the game too.
Thanks for your time.
Yes, thank you.
Hello, man. My name is Makai. Nice to meet you.
What's up, Makai? How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. I got a first question. What does someone need to do to have a career on sports management after getting a degree from a four-year college?
I would say if you're getting into sports management, I would say either major in business, get an MBA, or get a master's degree in exercise science. If you're going to just stick with an undergrad, I would almost say get a degree in exercise science and maybe minor in business. However, what I learned from being out here in Portland, I'm in Portland, Oregon, and this is where the World Nike headquarters are. There's tons of people that work out there that have communications degrees, English degrees, so it would definitely help to have a sporting background. Ultimately, you will have to know which way you want to go. Do you want to be in sports marketing? Sports management, that could be like working for an agency, where you represent.
Well, technically, I want to learn how to be I want to be a fitness trainer or I want to be an assistant coach.
Okay, so like an assistant coach, and I remember Andrea sharing, the bullet points. An assistant coach at the high school level or college level or professional level?
College level.
So generally how that starts is if you play the sport, for one, graduate from that school, and then they're going to have an internship once you're done, or they're going to have a graduate program. I've had interns intern with me for a year and then go down to Stanford and intern for a whole year. And my friend Alex Jones, he is finishing up his master's degree at Fresno State University, where he's been a strength and conditioning coach at Fresno State. Trevor Sackman, who was an intern for me, I connected him with Alex, and later he went down to Stanford and interned for a year. The story with him, he's working out one day at the end of his program. His head of his department is talking with this guy, and they call him into the office. 30 minutes later, he's being invited to China to go work with the China national swim team.
Wow.
So you really just start at your school, and once you get done, there'll be lists for internships. Your football or your sports department will know how to guide you, but you will want to just get started right away, and you're going to put in some work for free. So that's how it starts while getting your education paid for.
What kind of jobs can you get in sports management if you don't have a degree?
It's kind of tough because it's not necessarily hard, but it's creative in a sense that it depends how you define sports management. When I think of sports management, that could be working in sports marketing for Nike. You could be working for a sports agency where you contact college athletes and maybe you're the bridge that brings them to the agency when it comes time for, them preparing for their pro day or their combine. There's different ways, but, starting off, the degree is going to always carry weight. You will get to a point where that doesn't necessarily matter because everything is based on relationships. And the more that you can connect with people and be likable and can communicate, you'll be able to get past certain types of barriers and obstacles.
Do you go to college and what do you study?
I graduated from Western Oregon University several years ago. I went to Portland State for a few years playing football, and then I transferred to Western Oregon, where I played football at for one season. And down there, I majored in speech communications. That's what my undergrad degree is in, and I minored in health studies. So like being in, and see, this is kind of speaks to what you're talking about. I never knew that I was really going to get into coaching when I was that young. I played football after that in terms of playing semi-pro football and then on 2 different professional indoor football teams. But later, I knew that I would come back to coaching. I just didn't know how.
How do you describe the job of being a fitness trainer?
Well, there's different levels of it because some people are just trainers, and then there's some trainers that advance and become fitness managers. But, your day is spent every day assessing clients, writing programs for clients, understanding like their wants and needs, and then putting them in a position to reach their goals and objectives. For me, it's a little different because I'm more of a strength coach. I don't work with adults for the most part. If I work with adults, they're usually recreational athletes. But most of my time is spent with middle school, high school, and college athletes. So we're training to dominate the levels of varsity athletics and then go on to college and participate there, whether it's a junior college, NAIA, Division III, Division II, FCS, or FBS.
Division free, because Division free got no scholarships. So it's like,
school is school. If you don't have the talent, or if you get passed over, if you're trying to get a degree and you're trying to be successful in life and you believe in yourself, you're going to accumulate some debt. So sometimes you do have to take a risk on yourself and go about it that way.
What is the difference between being a personal trainer and a coach?
Well, being a personal trainer, you're mostly just working on exercises and movements. From a coaching standpoint, you could be coaching basketball, football. You're given, instructions on the game and you're competing, if that makes sense. And then you're going to practices and things like that. The two definitely correlate. You could be just doing one or the other, but those are the obvious differences. One, you're pretty much preparing your body for the rigors and the demands of the sport, whether you're working with one individual or groups.
All right. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Carlos.
Hello, Carlos.
My first question is, how can you stay focused as an athlete?
Oh, that's a good question, Carlos. Staying focused as an athlete, there's a lot to that. From the academic side, nothing happens, unless you're focused on your academics. And that means going to class every day. And that means, doing your homework every day and staying on top of your work. Now, staying focused for y'all at this stage of the game, it's almost like you got to know when to stay off social media, because the internet and social media is going to be your biggest or your largest distraction. So for y'all to stay focused, you have to minimize your distractions. And I tell my athletes, you guys have to learn to think less. That might sound counterintuitive to what y'all have been learning, but think about it. When you think less, or if you keep your affirmations, your visualizations on your time and your mantras, you're just focused on that. And, I think on average, we have anywhere between 60 and 80,000 thoughts a day. But high performance athletes, their thoughts per day are around 20 to 40,000, if that makes sense. So that's what I mean by thinking less.
Okay. Why is it important to work on your mindset?
It's important to work on your mindset because in life, you're always going to have barriers and obstacles. And a prime example of that is I coach a 7-on-7 football team out here. And we have a kid on our team that's in the 12th grade, and he drives a Range Rover, $85,000 vehicle. He's fortunate enough to drive that. But in his life, he's been handed certain things. And we have 3 quarterbacks on our team. The other 2 quarterbacks are younger than him, but they're better than him. And he feels like since he's the oldest, he should be starting, but he's not the best. So he doesn't start and he plays the least. And unfortunately, rather than him battle with the competition, he ended up quitting the team. So because he's been coddled, because he's been handed things in life, he doesn't have the mindset to deal with difficulty. He doesn't have the mindset to deal with barriers and obstacles. And that might be the guy that might get left a $10 million trust fund that blows it all. Or he always lives in his parents' shadow rather than working from the mud and coming all the way up. So you have to have a mental mindset when you're starting at the bottom of something, when you're starting something new, to see it through to the finish and realize that there's always going to be some type of obstacle, barrier or hurdle that you have to overcome, and that there's nothing wrong with failing. Failing and losing is okay. It's really what you learn from. So you want to have that kind of a mindset. Just take action, do it. If you don't win the first time, or if you lose, or if you fail the class, see what you can learn from it. And then you'll have, a closer blueprint to success the next time. And if you keep repeating those processes over and over and look at life like that, you will be successful. Nothing will stop you.
Okay. It's like you think easy.
It will keep your thinking. If you look at it like that, the way you approach things and think about things will be a lot easier and less stressful.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And my third question is, why did you want to start a podcast?
Well, as a coach, I wanted to do something that would distinguish me from other coaches. And I knew that would put me in a better position, because I'm sure y'all have listened to other podcasters. Y'all have listened to other YouTubers. And I know I learned this about YouTube about 8 years ago. Only 2 to 3% of the population posts on YouTube. So there's a lot of room. There's a lot of space for everybody to get in on the attention and to get your message out. It looks like a lot if you're researching or on YouTube, but it's a small part of the American population that posts to YouTube.
Okay. What does it take to become a good sports podcaster?
Well, it takes time, and you have to have a message, and over time, if you stick with your message, and becoming good is relative, because, we see people on Instagram, they might have 1 million followers or 40,000 followers. I know some podcasters, they have 100,000 downloads per episode, and that might be success to them. But for me, I average about anywhere from 1,500 to 2,000 downloads per episode. That's successful for me, because when I first started, it was about 200 per episode. So don't compare yourself to other people when you're thinking about success. You want to have benchmarks, people that you hang around that's going to be a positive influence, but your success really is just taking action every day, towards your goals and dreams.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Juan Castro.
Hey, Juan.
Hey, my first question is, what are some other careers you can have in sports?
Well, there's a ton. I mean, because you can be a sports writer. There's different types of sports podcasts that you could produce. People talk about football on their podcast. There's people that talk about just basketball. And usually after you get a certain following, there's probably going to be some needs that need to be met from your audience. And then you'll figure out a way to fulfill those needs in terms of products, goods, or services. You have coaching, you have management, you have becoming an athletic director. You can become an assistant coach. You can be a head coach. You can start your own gym and cater to particular athletes.
What is your best advice for someone who wants to work in the sports industry as a trainer, podcaster, or anything else?
I would say it's twofold. One, probably play a sport. If you don't play sports and you love sports, I would learn the ins and out to several different sports, so how to talk about that sport and all the positions within it at length, just like some sportscasters do, and then if you're able to go to school, there's always sports management programs, exercise science programs, fitness and sports programs. So you would take a course load that would be tailored and centered around that.
What is your favorite sports to watch, and who is your favorite team?
That's a tough one, because actually my favorite sports to watch are boxing and the UFC, mixed martial arts. And my favorite fighter to watch is John Bones Jones. In boxing, I like Floyd Mayweather. Now that he's retired, I really love and like to watch Canelo Alvarez. And for me, I never grew up boxing. I got into it as an enthusiast later, but I like it because the psychology of sports like boxing, wrestling, judo, jiu-jitsu, karate, taekwondo, the psychology is different because it's just you and another individual And if you make a mistake, it's on you and you can't blame anybody else. So that's kind of why I like those sports. In terms of football, I really don't watch a lot of pro football. I watch college. I really don't have a particular team. I have people that I follow, certain organizations like Alabama. I'm impressed with how they figure out a way to be in the championship year after year as far as like their system and the way they go about things.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
My name is Kiana. When did you get your first podcast, your first episode?
My first episode was at the end of August of 2016. It was like the end of August or the first week of September. Basically, I launched 3 shows at the end. I want to say the end of August in 2016.
Thank you.
Okay, so my name is Elvis.
Okay. Hey, Elvis, how you doing?
I'm feeling good. I have 2 questions. Would you like to have a YouTube channel? Like, since you make podcasts?
Well, I have a YouTube channel for my podcast, and I have a YouTube channel for my sports performance business. So whenever I release my podcast, from my hosting account, it goes straight to YouTube where people can listen to it, on YouTube.
What's your YouTube name?
Sports Mastery.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
And then the other one is ProForce Athletics on YouTube.
Oh, okay. My second question is, why do you like to motivate people?
That's a really good question, and I appreciate you asking me that. And for me, growing up, I didn't have mentors that aspired to play at the level of sports that I played at. I even wanted to play higher, but I didn't have anybody that I could talk to that had been down that road. Of course, we all have parents, we have uncles, we have teachers that we listen to. But when you have an aspiration to play college athletics, when you want to go to college and get a degree, and if you have dreams of playing at the next level as a professional, it helps to have somebody that's been down that road before so they can tell you the do's and the don'ts and tell you no when you want to hear a yes. And I never had that. So I wanted to start something where I could give, the young student athlete the truth, from my mistakes and my failures, like partying and things like that, staying all night, cheating on exams,
Yeah, like for me, I still motivated because some people, they help like motivate myself. It was my mom, one of my teachers. And also sometimes I go to YouTube, like watch motivation videos, like what do I need help with? What do I need to work on it?
That's good. I would keep hanging around your mom and keep hanging around your teachers, and then the people that you listen to on YouTube, keep listening to them, but always take action. Always go do the thing that you want to do instead of just thinking about it and talking about it.
Okay.
I heard you were talking about how you cater to different type of people. My question for you was, have you ever catered to people with disabilities during your sports?
That's a good question. I would say the closest that I've came to that, the first answer is no. But then on the flip side, I've been working with a kid off and on for like the last 3 years that he has ADHD, and he has some of the highest levels of ADHD. I work with him, so I could kind of say yes, that would be the limits of working with somebody with disabilities.
Do you plan your own managements for each person you're with, like for their mentality state? Do you try to sense that?
Yes. Everybody's at different levels because we're all going through something. Everybody is going through something, whether it's on their team, in their school, or at home, that could be an obstacle or barrier or some type of limitation that could be holding you back. Whether it could be a physical limitation, it could be an imaginary limitation, because our fears are often imaginary. So my thing is to really get to know the athlete, and more importantly, the parents, so I can figure out where the athlete is coming from and build a relationship with both parties. Because if I don't build a relationship with the parents, or if the parents aren't willing to open up, it makes it difficult, to peel certain layers back so that student will be successful in the classroom and definitely successful in sport.
And when you were younger, what were some of the obstacles that you had to face alone, since you said that you didn't have anyone with you at the time?
I just didn't have any money to play sports all of the time. because my mother was always working and then my dad wasn't around. So sometimes we could afford to play football and sometimes we couldn't afford to play football, and that was my favorite sport growing up, and then not having anybody, closely associated to the family that went to college and played sports. I was the first in my family to graduate from college. I was fortunate enough. I learned how to read at a young age. I learned how to write at a young age. And I happened to be, a decent athlete when I was young. And that opened up some opportunities to go from youth to middle school to high school and to college, and then bring in, connect the dots with experiences from one success, to the next.
And now, since you told me that the problem for you was funding, do you help different kids? Do you help them fund their education?
Not education, but what I do is when I meet really good families, and if they can't afford training, I offer, 1 to 2 scholarships per quarter where I just train those kids for free. And they happen to be like 3.5, 4.0 students, and they're usually from the city.
What are some tips where you can tell people how to manage like stress or anxiety issues, like they don't test well? What are some tips that you can give them?
I would say anytime you have like something that you're not good at, or if you feel like you have an insecurity, you really just have to double down and approach it and just do the thing that you fear, do the thing that you're insecure about. Find somebody that you could to have a conversation where you can express your feelings and concerns about certain subject matter that might make you feel uneasy, or that might give you anxiety, or that might give you stress. Oftentimes when you can talk through things, you realize with the right person, it's not what you thought it was, and we have to just put it in perspective. And at the end of the day, what I mean by that is at some point, we're all going to die. So the little things that we go through from day to day, it really has no bearing. I would say whenever y'all get a chance to talk to older people, go talk to older people that are like in their 80s or in their 90s that might live in assisted living homes, and ask them what their regrets are, because they'll tell you their regrets. And you can often take that knowledge and energy and then apply that to your own life. And that's why I say take action and don't be concerned, with failing or, the end result of things. Just go do it. And I promise you'll learn from your experiences and you'll gather valuable experiences.
Do you feel like if you were to suddenly fall ill or something, do you feel like you've accomplished everything you wanted?
I'm doing it right now, but no, because I have a lot more to do. And I have a lot more people that I want to help. Like I need the conversation that we're having right now. I need to do about 3,000 of these.
Do you regret anything in the past where you wish you would change and go down a different path?
Yes and no. Yes, if I wasn't such a partier in high school and college, I would have got more done. I probably would have graduated from school with a master's degree. But on the flip side of that is no, because I have some wonderful experiences and I share those with the kids that I work with today. So then they don't make the same mistakes. And then they can, really enhance their academic experience and get to the highest levels with their genetic potential. And then you also mentioned that you said that you had people you can talk to. With the people you train, do you feel like you'll help them through it? Yes, I am a guide. I am a personal confidant, to the student athletes and the sports parents that I work with. And I intentionally build relationships with them. For some people, it takes longer with others, but the goal is always to get to know the family inside and out. And my last question is, I know that most people don't have someone else they can talk to, but do you have someone where you can at least talk to for your own self? Yeah, I have older coaches, business leaders here in the Portland metro area, counselors, advisors that I talk to, personal coaches. Yes, everybody has to have a coach. Okay, thank you. Yep, you're welcome.
Who's the GOAT of basketball to you?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I like Michael Jordan, I like Kobe, and I like LeBron. That's a tough one.
I picked Michael.
Definitely individually, Michael just on the court, he could just go to a whole mental level where it was out of the space at the time.
I picked Michael because he retired, then came back and won 3 more rings.
It's true. Yep.
Is there anything else you want to share with us today?
Yes, I would say for y'all, whatever it is that you want to do in life, I would start doing it now and realize that as you get older, you'll probably change your mind about some things, and that's going to be okay. You might want to major in one thing now. Once you get to school, it might change, and there's nothing wrong with that. But, being young, what I've come to realize is that I grew up pre-internet. If you can imagine not ever having the internet. Imagine not having Instagram or YouTube or Snapchat. So it's different for y'all because our lives are exposed every day now. So you have to make, adjustments because, some people get judged through social media, and it can affect the way you think. It can affect the way you act. It can affect the way you do things. So what I would encourage y'all is to constantly take action and don't judge and don't worry about being judged by others. Take action. If you make a mistake, learn from it and keep going, because at the end of the day, whatever you're going through, the world, it doesn't care. You just have to find people that care about you and keep your team intact and keep your circle of influence and just stay with that, and you will be successful.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Part of the Story podcast is produced by students at Ray Grun Training Center High School in Chicago.
With broadcast support from After School Matters and Creative Imposter Studio.
Our theme music is by Gennaro Jackson, aka DJ Sparks.
You can find our show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and on the web at poweryourstorypodcast.com.
We are on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube as Power Your Story Podcast.
Follow us, leave a review, and share our show with a friend.
Thank you for listening. Keep it classy.
Burn.